I got Harry B in the studio today, someone who I've learned about from afar. Glad to have you in here because it seems like you have a lot of experience, the kind of experience that someone like myself, a creative, and I know you use the word creative a lot. And so as a creative, when I was introduced to you, I was like, wow, this guy he's giving a lot of people on the same creative journey sort of guidelines or guardrails, if you will, that kind of keep us on the track, not just like personally when we're by ourselves in front of our computer, like what am I going to do, but also like business wise. I think the kind of content you put out about clients, like how to deal with clients, expectations, briefs, even all the teamwork kind of stuff, that too, the technical side of things, because I think with creativity, we like to be free and wild. But I do find in my own journey that having structure, bringing that into the creative mix helps not just the business, but then it keeps you sane too. So, I mean, just give me your sort of self-intro. I'm kind of interested to hear from you, Harry B, here in the studio.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Harry B. I'm a creative and entrepreneur, and I think I say that because sometimes entrepreneurs can just be in the business side of things, but I was trained as an art director and started in advertising back when it was just advertising before social media. So creativity is like my kind of venture into creating businesses, and the business I create are creatively, I create agents. I've worked at 3 different agencies, but then I built my own agency also, and I'm in the process of building another one.
So you're just one of those, like, just always working on something, always building something.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a builder. I think I'm definitely a builder. I think that's where the creative entrepreneur, and I have this thing where I kind of talk about, so obviously there's the word, okay, so I guess define the word creative versus creator. Like creator is, I think that's a newer term because obviously it's based on what you're doing here. Like you're like not only thinking the idea, you're like making it. You guys can't see this amazing studio, but like you're like coming with ideas and making it. Where like a more traditional, when I grew up like as a creative, you like thought of the idea and then you partnered with a director, a photographer, and that's still the case now. But I think there is a differentiator between like conceptualizing an idea and being able to express it, which is, I think, the now and the power of the now. And then there's also, in my life right now, I'm working on projects that are a range of that. So I'm working on a project with a client right now where we're working with a renowned like fashion and fine art photographer. So, I'll be going to New York in a couple of weeks to do a shoot. And that's kind of classic creative. We're coming up with an idea, doing references. We have a producer, we're going to be set shoots, we'll have a video team besides the photography team, like very traditional way we're kind of capturing it, where versus when I work with creators, I'm concepting with them, and then they're also using some of them do have teams, but a lot of times it's their own equipment and their own way of doing things. Is that clear?
So the creator versus creative is what you're trying to just lay out for us, right?
Yes.
Would you say that the creative part is more like a hired gun, like a part of a system, a part of a producer's plan? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think 2 things. I think creatives usually work at agencies, I would say. If you're, I guess let's start from the beginning. If creativity is what you're interested in, I think, which can come through a multitude of ways, you could work for yourself and be an illustrator or be a photographer or now be a creator, like make your own content and put it on the internet like this.
Yeah.
And now you were like, so that's almost like a crafts person, right? And then a creative, yes, would be hired by an agency to come up with an idea, and usually it breaks down to 2 things, either an art director or a copywriter. Mm-hmm. And you kind of, a client gives you a brief, you concept it, and you come up with an idea, present it to them, and then you hire a creator, right? You hire that crafts person, that photographer, that editor, that illustrator to then execute your idea with them. So sometimes a creative doesn't actually make things.
Would you say then that, so for myself, as well as a lot of people listening, I'm sure, it's like we feel like creators, we hear that word a lot more, content creator or creator, right? And there's almost like tangible output of my process. this video, that photo, this whatever, this book, right? There's a tangible. I say tangible, but a lot of it's digital. But
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like I can point at a video. Whereas creative, the product of their output, of their energy and their, intuition it sounds more like IP or like intellectual property. Like I thought of connecting these two dots or these two people and let's go to that location and have that person. So it's a little bit more, would you say, idea? Like for me, the hard part that I have sometimes is where do I draw the line between my idea and execution? Kind of divorcing the idea from the execution.
Exactly. And I think that is the point. I think so the birth of the creative in advertising and marketing, like production was in, like when I started to date myself in like 2000, like this would have cost like, this is beyond our means, like beyond my means, like literally like shooting, editing, like it wasn't like you needed to have a full editing suite. Even the computers at the time, you couldn't, like the editing programs were so rudimentary, like it wasn't at this level. So we would just come up with the idea, right? And a lot of times the idea, I think the other part is like, part of creative is usually solving a business problem, or I guess the other term that might be familiar is creative director, right? Like you have these creative directors, right? Rest in peace, Virgil, but Virgil, I think, really brought forth this idea of like, I could be a creative director, right? Like Virgil came with ideas and he didn't physically make the clothing. He didn't physically make the fashion shows, and it was his concepts that he brought to life through collaboration. So the creative is that, like, comes with the idea, comes with the concept, right? And then the creator, right? This new thing is really about like, you've kind of created your own like almost media channel, right? Through the way you express yourself. And now brands are just going straight to creators, right? They're like, look, here's my product, put it into your world that you've created. I've known Casey Neistat for a long time, but like Casey's a perfect example. Like he created his world, which was New York City, but his vision, and now people want to be part of his narrative, right? He's not like, they're not going and say, Casey, solve this business problem for me. They're like, look, we love your world, how you've created it, and we put you in there.
I was going to bring that up as a reference because I don't know which Casual Monday it was, but I was like, oh, that reminds me of Casey. It's kind of weird for me to like assume you just know him because New York. It's like the opposite when I'm like traveling and like, oh, you're from Hawaii? Do you know this person? But it turns out you actually do. For me, like personally, but also like when I talk with other creators, like that's the Nike campaign he did in, I don't know, was it the 2000s? Like where Nike's just like, here's 10K, I think it was 10K, and do your thing. And that kind of was a moment in time where the creator, I think a lot of people will point at as like the creator was born, in that now you are the creative director and the creator. I guess maybe we didn't have those terms. I'm not sure. Yeah. You would know. But like that trust process of being like, you created a world, go and run with it. I trust you. And he did that around the world kind of montage thing. And it became okay for this sort of marriage between the big fish and the little fish, even though it's all relative, because the little fish in this case was huge on YouTube, right? Especially during that time of YouTube, like no one was doing it like that. And so we kind of like, for me, if you go to music, the world of music, and like, let's say hip hop, you can go on any kind of like Reddit or anything talking about hip hop and like, it's not what it was, it's different. And like, oh, this is legacy, this is new. Like there's all of these sort of like, I guess you could call it evolution stages. And I think when it comes to video, even saying something like video today, or advertising, because a lot of advertising is video, especially today. But that, for me, was like, okay, it's changed now. Something's changed. There's a new lane that's being carved out. I'm not going to say like he's the only one. I don't want to like diminish anything other people have done in that same lane. But for me, that's one that kind of hit, like, we can do it. The democratization of not just information, but like of content, of this process. Like the power's in our hands to get these huge deals with big fish. That's crazy. I felt like you're in the middle of something, but that I was just thinking about.
No. I mean, definitely. I mean, I never. It's kind of funny because obviously I lived through that. I was on the sidelines. I was friendly with Casey, and I wasn't part of that piece, the Nike piece. But like I remember when it launched, and at that time there weren't as many. I mean, back then it was kind of bloggers were popular. So bloggers bring it back where there was Blogger and there was WordPress, and you did photos and wrote things, and you would like tag products to get kind of referrals. And then there weren't I mean, at the time, like YouTuber, I guess he was called. He wasn't called a creator yet, maybe a YouTuber. He obviously Casey, I mean, was definitely, I mean, coming from New York, but in general was probably one of the more popular one, endearing. And I think it's funny we say it because it was brands working with bloggers or brands working with YouTubers, like that wasn't a common thing, right? And I mean, when I started my agency in '88, it was 2010. And at the time, when you worked with a client, my thing was working with bloggers. I was an agency that knew bloggers and YouTubers. Actually, Casey Nessa did a brand video for me for one of my first clients. So my whole thing was like, look, we could work directly with these people and make stuff, and they know their audience better than you know their audience. So it's like you're kind of getting it because to go through the traditional process, to take you through a traditional process of advertising is you have what's called a strategist, a planner, and they do research on the consumer. And they're like, this consumer, let's say we're selling tea. This consumer likes tea. They don't drink coffee. They live in a rural area. They're a mother, a father. They're this age, that age. They're this. They make this much money. They kind of paint a picture. Then they brief the creative, and they go, creative, based on what we told you about this consumer, you create something to make them want the product. And we sit there. I'm an art director. I have a copywriter partner. I'm early in my career, and we're thinking of ideas based on this brief to hopefully make something, a piece of content. Back then, it was a TV commercial or a billboard or a radio ad to like get them to be like, "Wow, I like your tea," right?
Yeah.
Then suddenly, Casey, but I won't want to tell Casey's story, but look up the story about the Nike commercial. Basically, he took it was actually the Fuel Band. It was for the Fuel Band dating it for who knows even know what the Fuel Band was. And he took the Fuel Band and he just took it around the world. So it's like he didn't follow a brief. And the reason it went, and it quote unquote went viral was like he knew what people want. So you're skipping the planner, you're skipping this deep creative process. You're like instinctually, Casey knew how to engage people through the platform. And Nike was like, wow, his audience is, I assume we're Nikes and we're like the Fuel Band because he's very active. He's like, so they just kind of cut out the planner, cut out the creative and go, look, we'll just give him the product and see what happens. And he took it to the next level. And now that is like, that's standard, right? Like there's a standard world where there's still planners and there's still, so I'm not saying there's no need for strategy, but the strategy would be like, okay, we want to reach like this type of person. That creator speaks to that type of person. So let's gift them the product and let's pay certain creators to do certain things, right? So, and then now from clients doing that, the internet does that. So what right now the algorithms are doing is niching. Like so I think we're in the time of niche. So people are like, oh, how do I grow? Even clients, how do I grow following? Or people, it's like right now when you like hitting post on Instagram, post on TikTok, post on YouTube, it's trying to figure out like, what is your niche? What are you about? Is this about cooking? Is this about sports? Is this about surfing? Whatever it is, then it feeds you to your audience and then like other people that like tea.
Right.
And then once if people start engaging it, it recognizes that's what you're about. And if you continuously post again and again about a certain topic, you become an authority on that topic and it starts automatically serving you traffic. So that's like, so the internet's kind of matching this thing of creating creators. Like the algorithm helps create creators. So the clients are thinking of like, what niche do we want to speak to? Instead of like thinking of, oh, do we pay a media outlet to do it? We're like, who do we pay who's living in this niche? And let them organically tell a story. So that's kind of the world we're in. So it's like, which is, I think, great and clear brief for a creator, but to me can be like limiting because I've always, through my own social, like had a range of things. And I feel like people are a range of things. So it's like, it can be challenging to be like, I'm just this one thing.
That's the challenging part because people aren't always, like, it's telling someone to be the same emotion all day. That's hard. We're not, you know what I mean? Like we wake up, I'm a different Kenji. Step out the door, I'm a different Kenji. Like, driving, maybe I'm a different Kenji. Of course, there's a root, a base, a sort of a constant.
Yeah.
But we are human beings, and there's differences in identities, you could say, or hats you wear, and to be motivated or incentivized to represent one of them can be a bit challenging, right? And people were like, "Oh, but I got to niche down," or if I'm a master of all trades, was it jack of all trades, master of none? There's a second part to that I forgot, but like that's one challenge that's come about. But I also think it's what's kind of empowering about it is that you can just do one of these pieces of you, and that can maybe like supply that can handle your income for your needs and maybe give you a 6-month runway in a matter of 2 months, or like, like that kind of possibility now is a very real thing. I think a lot of people are getting onto it where it's like, if I just put this one sort of idea or collection, some kind of theme, what you're saying, like that feeds the algorithm, I understand it, and I just niche down and just put this out there. Internet's going to do the rest, and that could lead to monetary gain if I so choose. Maybe I just want to create a community that then later I monetize. Whatever the case, right? It's possible. I see people doing it. That's like a good side, but I think you would know what's the other side of that, like whose jobs are being taken. In this example, maybe it's a strategist. You know what I mean? Like what sort of legacy roles are dying or diminishing or on the downturn because of all the creators going on the up? There got to be some sort of equilibrium.
Yeah, I don't know. I think first and foremost, media companies. Look at it. Vice went out of business. When I was a kid, like, you got the Vice magazine. We used to get, so it was for free. You'd get Vice. You'd see what's going on, right? Rolling Stone. Like, I think media companies for sure. Rolling Stone. Like, I actually love magazines. Like, I like when I travel. I just love the idea of a mag. It's like I can get like topics because multiple things kind of condensed, like an article. Like, yes, I'd love to read a whole book about a topic, but it's so great to get the article, right? And like, I think I've definitely. I still buy magazines; they still exist, but I think podcasts have sort of replaced magazines. I do like depth. I feel like I do like a little more depth, but I definitely think media companies have been the most challenged, right? Like, and I would say they were not replaced by the creator, but they were replaced by YouTube, Google, Meta, and now TikTok, right? Where it's like they are the media. They're the media, right? They're where people go. I was just on with a strategist today who does some social listening for me, and basically we were looking at a certain kind of community, and that community, like, they don't go to news. They go to social for news, and they get their news from peers, which is like pretty awesome, but also can be kind of scary.
Yeah. Echo chambers, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the challenge I have. I think two challenges I have. So one, I think media companies, which, again, they were gatekeepers for so many years, just like record companies have had a lot of bad reputations for being gatekeepers and choosing what goes into the world. Media companies were, and now it's like the people get to choose. So to me, it's the responsibility goes to you. It's like, I think we need to start to, instead of saying social media is bad and oh my God, because let's accept it's not going away. Take responsibility for what you like. Take responsibility for what you share of other people's. Take responsibility for like your algorithm, right? Like, it is listening to us. Like, we are voting with our thumbs. Like the more you vote for, like, things that aren't like rising up the collective, the more the algorithm's going to celebrate those people, And it's like, recently when Kim Kardashian did her ad and she kind of made fun of environmental, like where the environment was, it's kind of like that went more viral than any kind of non-profit video about the state of the world that we're challenged with. It's like, I don't know. It's like,
is that what your Kim Kardashian video was about?
Something
about what I learned from Kim Kardashian.
Yeah. So my Kim Kardashian one was Oh no, just the idea of founder-based brands and why they do so well, and it goes in this creative economy. That's another thing that's really interesting. Is we just talked about brands hiring creators. Creators are like, forget being hired by a brand. I'm just going to launch a brand. So I did an episode about, like, we need to learn, instead of, obviously trained in advertising, working multiple agencies, built my career, support my family. I'm admitting that, like, we need to stop looking at advertising, the history of advertising, but learn from Mr. Beast, Kim Kardashian. And what I'm saying is that, like, that challenge of, like, agencies go, what is the consumer doing? Where Mr. Beast is like, what is my audience doing? right? And like, what is Kim Kardashian, like my audience is gonna like this. And that is just a mindset that brands need to get away from because they're still like pigeonholed. They're almost like the algorithms. They're like, what is this 40-year-old guy from this like? It's like, no, like people are calling someone a consumer, I think is derogatory. Like, I think that's what's the beauty of creators. They're thinking of audience. They're like tapping into the mindset and they need to like, either they're a reflection of their audience, like, or they understand them in a way that other people don't, and they're able to like communicate with them at scale. And that's really powerful. So I think learning from them is in what I do. I look to that. Like I said, I just think we have to take responsibility for what we're doing. And that's I think Kim Kardashian, I mean, that piece went viral. From a marketing perspective, genius.
Right.
From a like responsibility for the future of mankind, like fails on multiple levels. And you know, we both have children. It's like, fuck, like we're gonna make fun of the world like the world getting warmer, like as a way to like, you know, how are we profiting? So I mean, and that comes back to values. And I just think, you know, through advertising and marketing, I've been able to accumulate some wealth in times of my life and buy things. And you just realize like the pursuit of just buying things like is an empty pursuit.
So would you say, okay, what's the most resistant to the test of time? For example, like a process, you know, the creative process, those kind of things, I think kind of stand the test of time. You get an idea, then you try it, iterate, get feedback, iterate. Like that thing is probably not gonna be effective so much as, let's say, the tools. Like you talk about buying stuff. These cameras, I know it's not gonna, you know, like buying cameras is just the most concrete example of that, right? Or even an iPhone.
It's like holding sand. Buying technology is like holding sand. It's already like falling into your hand as you're holding it. You open it, like I have nothing, even though you have the camera. So.
You think cars depreciate when you drive it off the lot? When you leave, after you click buy now on B&H, like I like that. Sand just coming out. I think of that too, like an hourglass. I've said it to my friends, like I look at all this stuff as it's like an hourglass. Like get the most out of it now. Because these things will change, and I don't think I'm going to stand the test of time. But the ideas that I put down and put out to the world, to the point of, I think you said social listening.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I like that. I've never heard it, but as soon as I heard it, I understood it.
Yeah, so there's social listening tools. So like, again, so obviously, you know, Google and Meta and TikTok have they just
Google
know
Meta,
everything.
TikTok, okay.
Yeah, they know everything, and Amazon, they know everything, like all your behavior, but there are tools you can use. And so strategists now, so strategists back in the day, planners would do interviews and talk to people and do that side research. But we have social listening. There are tools that like can scrape the internet for public information, you know, obviously since the last election, there's been a lot more privacy on a lot of it, but we can scrape and understand from microblogs, from social media, from public, like what people's interests are. And like, so we have like, there's a bunch of tools. And so when we are doing projects right now, we like to understand. So I think what the test of time is, yes, the planner and strategist has evolved, and there's still need for them in the creative process. And the thing is who are you speaking to? That's the question, right? And what are their interests and why, which applies whether you're a social listener or just Mr. Beast who just understands it from doing the algorithm over and over again and getting response in real time. It's like a musician playing for an audience and getting applause and realizing that song's better than another song. Like they're doing it real time. And then this I think it's more of theory and kind of making hypothesis, which is more almost like a scientific thing, right? By scraping this information, we can figure some things out and connect some dots. And then also the creative process, like I think I don't want to be diminished, and I think is the example in the Kardashian is the power of great ideas. And if we are in the idea of creating things and hopefully like moving people and connecting with people, we have to take credit for the result. And are you moving people towards something that's going to like better them or better the planet or ruin it? Like I think that to me is the real question, because we know the power of ideas and bringing them to life, right? It's really like amazing the freedom now that like anyone can just come with ideas, express it through social media, and suddenly like a bunch of people agree that's great. The algorithm recognizes that and it becomes popular. But let's just like start to think about like what and why, and not just, I think what's serious when people just chasing the likes and the engagements, because
Are you, would you say at this point in your journey, what, 20, was it 30,
Yeah.
28?
20, yeah, so I started in like 99. So what is it? 24 years.
24 years in the advertising market, and even that itself has changed. But 24 years in the game, right? So now you are at a point where, are you doing more things that are towards that sort of why, who am I type of thing? Because it sounds like you're getting busy fulfilling other people's ideas, like clients' ideas, for example. But are you sort of exploring that for yourself now? Like, what is it that Harry B's out here, the ideas of Harry B, how are you iterating those ideas and sharing it with the world?
Yeah, so I mean, I think two things. So one, I use Casual Mondays because I believe that like, my journey is a gift and like all I've learned, and it's being a creative is really hard. It's not linear. It's not just like, okay, if you're going to be a lawyer and you graduate from a certain law school, you'll get a job. Or if you want to honestly be in business, you get an MBA from Harvard, like you're going to get a job in business. It's like, it's fair. Like it's not easy, but it's like, it's clear to be a successful creative and support yourself and support your family and like it isn't as linear and clear. So I do feel like part of, when I ran an agency, I hired people. When I sold data, it was 75 people. Like I really believe in all the people I worked with, and I mentored a lot. Like my team I learned from them and they learned from me. So right now my agency, we want to stay small and work remote. So I don't have that breadth of people. So I do see Casual Mondays as a way to me like help and share the gifts of my labor with the people that I with creatives and creators. I do believe like in the freedom of that, the freedom to be a creator. And like my worst nightmare is just knowing that there's like a creator out there. Sorry. My worst nightmare is that there's a creative out there and they feel stuck. Right? Like I think you should be stuck on solving a problem. I don't think solving creative problems, but feeling stuck like in a job you want to do or working on a client you want to work on. And like that to me is like, I don't want anyone to be in a situation. I've been there too. I think it's just a dark place. I've worked at a place I didn't want to work. I've worked on projects I didn't want to work on, and I started getting paid for it. So I was like they call it golden handcuffs. You're like, wait, but I need the money and I have to support myself. And I have to support. So I want to make sure that creative freedom. And the other thing is entrepreneurialism, to realize that part of creativity, I think, is entrepreneurialism, and that this idea of working for yourself is the ultimate freedom, and truly what America was built on, and that creatives can do it. Like that is different from the beginning. The beginning, like the late '90s, yes, if you were maybe in a band, you were creative, or maybe like, but now that like you could get on and start making videos and support yourself, like that wasn't the case. So like there is more than ever a time. So whether you're a creator or you're a creative that starts an agency and starts to like employ people, like I want to help people do that. So it's first. And then second, yes, philanthropy is part of my journey. Back in the day, we always had philanthropic clients, but when I left Havas during COVID, I worked I did a bunch of nonprofit work. Just when my last trip in New York, I'm launching a new campaign about the fossil fuel in fashion and how synthetic materials are basically fossil fuels. And I'm doing, so we're working on that. That'll launch in December, a new piece about that. So and then also the new client I'm working with is a brand called Noah, and Brendan and Estelle, the founders, have always done things more responsibly. They're a smaller brand, the way they make their clothing, the way their supply chain, like they're thinking about how to do things in a more responsible way. So and the project I did with Tommy Hilfiger last year was with Shawn Mendes, and we were working on a collection that was made more sustainably with more sustainable materials. So I think I do try to partner with people that do have a purpose and are doing things differently. So I think first and foremost there. And then again, I'm now living in Hawaii and not New York. I do think cities in general are amazing for business. I was just in New York. New York will always have my heart. I'm born and raised New Yorker, but like I do think there's it's just complete unsustainable lifestyle of waste and just kind of pollution and mental and physical damage that I just think is kind of scary. So I think even physically just moving to Hawaii and trying to start an agency from Hawaii, and I do have to travel, which obviously isn't sustainable, but I think it's just living proof that I changed.
What's the biggest thing for you? I'm opposite. I born and raised in Hawaii, and then I left, and this is kind of my homecoming. I've come back. You know what I mean?
Welcome back.
I love it. And you know what? I have a different lens, right? But I've connected my time outside of Hawaii. I've connected with people from all around the world, and in that time, they kind of reflect back at you what they see Hawaii is, right? And then I was able to live in these cities, big ones. I mean Tokyo. Like I lived in Japan for 8 years, and when
wow.
and I've been to Tokyo so many times, and I always felt around day 3, like if there was 2 nights, I remember waking up after that second night, I just wanted to get the fuck out. I just wanted to leave. And when you said like sustainable, I'm like, yeah, the sustainability of your lifestyle is something I think a lot of creatives kind of oversee. Golden handcuffs, whatever. I'm getting good money. I'm getting good networking. I'm meeting people. I just met so-and-so, like things that cities offer now with the internet, COVID 2020 really blew that whole model apart. And we've got people like not saying like, or recognizing first it's not sustainable. I don't want to be here. When I wake up, I don't want to be here. I felt that on a smaller scale. But I don't like, for example, I don't like living in tall buildings anymore. I can't do that. But I love the transportation in the city. I love the options of food in the city. All these things but coming back to Hawaii, having a family, raising a family here, the crazy thing is, before I left Hawaii, I felt isolated. Coming back to Hawaii now after my journey, I don't feel isolated. and you're actually, you're living that out because you're still very well connected. You're still working. But I think there's a little bit more living that comes along with that working. So you're showing up. I notice for me, I show up charged, fulfilled. I'm able to show up to these things a better version of me because my environment just kind of supports that. So from your point of view, New York, born and raised, we're like literally at the other side of the map. You know what I mean? Like you're way over here, I'm way over here. Today, we're both here in Hawaii, But what has been the biggest kind of hurdle, you think, for people from Hawaii? What kind of things can you offer people from Hawaii that can give them that sort of breadth of, I would say, networking and the things that cities traditionally might offer, but from Hawaii?
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously so my wife was born here. She's not Hawaiian, but she was born and raised on North Shore. So I've been coming to Hawaii now for over 12 years. And from the first time I came, I mean, from the East Coast, it's not, I mean, yes, when people surf, they maybe come here, but I never really came here until I started, spending time with Allie. And I don't know. I definitely felt like it was home. Like I never had a second home, and that's our challenge right now. Because people are like, why don't you move to LA? Or people moving to Austin. It's like, no, it's like New York and Hawaii will always be my home. And I was excited to do this because I believe in community, the word community, and I'm not talking about like social media community, but in true community. And the way to be part of a community is you have to give. Like people think, hey, why am I not part of this community? It's like you have to like give to get from a community. It's like an exchange, right? Mm-hmm. And I do want to give what I've learned in my life to the Hawaii community. And like how do you know Casey? How do you like my community? I had an office in Soho. I started a company. I employed people. I have people who like work for ASAP Rock. Like I have people who worked for me, started their own companies. There's been multiple agencies built because I was giving that to the community of New York. I was a business owner employing people doing it. So like here it's harder to, again, my clients are virtual, maybe it's not employing, but how do I give back to the Hawaii community, right? So like what I started to do is I never went to co-working space. I used to make fun of co-working spaces. I had my own, I had my own office in Soho. The 88 was because we were at 88 Prince. I started going to Box Jelly. I met Ray, I met Ara there. And I started to be like, oh, there's a creative community in Hawaii. And I started I became friends with them and like started to realize like I get offered to get on a podcast like yours or get offered to be on your show. It's like, I want to connect with the community and give back because I think there's so much creativity here. It is unique. As isolated you are, because of tourism, like you have such expansive experience of multiple other cultures, right? Like that the Hawaii, like there is so much room for the next blank from Hawaii, right? Like, right, the next, obviously, Tong coming out from the musical stand, even though he doesn't live on the island anymore, but like, from a creator and creative standpoint, I feel like sky's the limit, right? Like it's so I do want to give back more. And again, it'll be 3 years being here and I've, made my connections. I've tried to do, but like, I don't feel like I fully blossomed in that yet, but I do want to give back to that community.
For me, I was born in 1985, right? I graduated, in Hawaii, it's like, what year did you graduate? That's like the next thing, right? I graduated in 03, Campbell High School, Eva Beach, right? And so for me, my options were in 2003, in like May-ish or whatever, April, whatever. I know I'm going to graduation's coming. And then what are my options after that, right? As a young man born and raised in Hawaii. Military, there's a lot of recruiters on campus, right? Military, further, higher education, whether that's community college, UH Manoa, whatever. For me, I ended up going to Portland State in Oregon, or working. And
you're going to be in a hotel probably.
And you're probably going to be in hospitality or adjacent, or maybe you just know in your own sphere you've got someone who's a stevedore or whatever the case, got a trade, got a plumbing business or something, right? So, and this is very, very top of mind for me. I just had my 20-year reunion. Okay,
wow.
So yeah. So it's very top of mind for me. And I was like, I ended up leaving, but not too many people leave. And I feel like every year I would come back home, I'd visit. First 5 years, it was coming back from Oregon, West Coast, right? Then after that, 8 years, Japan, coming back. Either way, like, I realized, like, other people who left, when I met them, a lot of them went to LA. A lot of them went to LA, and why though? Because that's where they saw the opportunity. And a lot of them did. They networked. They made moves that they couldn't have otherwise made here. There just wasn't the kind of fertility here, the opportunity here. So we left to find it and chase it, right? And everyone's kind of blossomed in their own ways and lanes and such. But now, if I'm thinking of a student graduating 2023, what options do they have? I see someone like, Harry B, where now, even though we're here, we've got people who have been around and are here giving the game, just giving the game away, right? You've got that, and you've also got the internet. Yeah. You've got YouTube University. You've got the traditional kind of barriers. I feel like, man, now, and as fathers, right? Like, is location really that important anymore? And if it's not, then yeah, now's the best time, because you can be in this environment that's Hawaii, and you can still have the opportunity. And the thing is like, sometimes there's got to be a limit to that. Especially, let's say my dream is to be a designer. Mm-hmm. I want to make clothes. I want to make shoes. I want to make bags or whatever. Well, now you got to solve the manufacturing, sourcing, and all of that stuff, which now you are limited by your location. You're on an island. You got to go there to Thailand, China, these factories. So like we're still, I want to say we still got those limitations on just space where we are. But I feel like the opportunity has bloomed or sort of evolved in a way, powered mainly by the internet and tools, and then how people move around. You mentioned tourism. People come to Hawaii with a lot of gifts too. I know there's two sides of that coin. That's another conversation, another podcast. But as someone from a big city, arguably the biggest U.S. city, I don't know. There's probably a stat somewhere that says like, if you go around and ask 1,000 people around the world, like name a city in America, it's probably going to be New York. Now Texas is blowing up and all that, but like, you're from the Big Apple, one of the biggest cities of America, and a lot of people in the world see that as the place of opportunity and opportunity and opportunity. You yourself have cut your teeth there, paid your dues, built up businesses and all that there, which is not easy. And then now you're here. So I'm just wondering, like, is there some sort of like upcoming? Like, I want to see a bright future, not just for Hawaii, but like anyone who feels they don't have opportunity where they live. Like anyone who feels like they have to go chase. I mean, the term chase your dreams kind of is built into that. Like that means leave. But I think now we're kind of going into more of a, similar to the power shift from big media agency to like creator. Similar to that, it's like, you don't need to go and chase as much anymore as you can just kind of dive in deep to what your personal life is, your surrounding, your sphere right now where you're at. Like there's opportunities there. I don't know what it's going to take to sort of like cement that as like, I feel like there's like a Casey Neistat Nike video kind of event that's going to be like, you don't have to chase your dream. You can really just build it, and it doesn't matter where you are. I don't know. I feel like there's a hint of that because you're.
I love that. No, I love that. I love that thing. And I think the thing also is, I love that comparison. So basically, the city is to like remote living, and rural living is like the big agency to the creator, I think is it. I think it's really, but like you said, I still don't know if people believe they can do it. That's the question. Okay, so where I live in North Shore, like, right, wrong, or different, kids think they can be pro surfers because they're like, John went to my school, and John's actually right there. Or I could be a vlogger because Jamie O'Brien is like literally walking his dog in front of my school. Like, so that it's like you do still need to see not only people that look like you on the internet, but I think around you. So I mean, as you're talking, I'm inspired. I'm like, dude, let's take a show on the road. Let's go to your old high school. Like, let's get, like, people need to know. And like, I think it's important to tell your story and put your story out there that you did travel. I mean, Allie, my partner, she went to Kahuku High School. She went to Cal and then moved. She went from from Berkeley over to New York, and she made the journey and the pilgrimage. And I have to say, like, I one thing I respect her, I'm like, oh my God, like, my parents live like 20 minutes outside the city. You like came to New York, like, I'm like, dude, that takes way more courage than I have. Like, I've always admired that. I'm like, this is like my people. I grew up here. Like, I know people from like when I was a kid. Like, you just had to like jump into this freaking shark-filled waters and figure it out, and she did. But like, but I do. So I think two things. I think of, I do think it's important to experience city life. I was just, like I said, I just spent 10 days in New York. I have to go back in December. And I do think jimping in, leveraging it, and the power of real life. I think this is a good question. Power of real life versus virtual. I think you still need to balance that out. And I think even in community, right? Like finding, I talked about the power of community of like, you have to give to get, but also everything. This mic was like more than one person coming together to make it. That camera, the internet, like the gathering of people. So to me, it's like, how do you get the people together? And it's not about convincing people. Like, getting people together to get it will make a difference in anything. And that's the challenge of the world thing. So I think get people together, share that message, and we can gather them virtually. But I still think the importance of real life meeting is important, right? So understanding those people exist, and that was the thing of the co-working. It's like, actually, there's some creative people. I'm like, oh wow, Ara, like, you're creative, I'm creative, and then I met Ray, and I'm like, Ray, you created this, and like, we just connect, and like, it's this thing. I have a new process of I like to get back to. I have my little studio in my house where I work, and I get so much work done when I'm inspired. So inspired by the island. I feel so healthy. I feel so clear. But then I do need to intentionally get in the world and connect with people that get me and do what I want to do, and that shared connection blossoms new things. And I think that's, and like I said, there's Blue Startups in Hawaii, which is like a big startup thing, which I'm not a part of, but I follow on Instagram. I'm always great to see like people are doing it. And I think seeing that's super important in real life too. So I think you just need to I think that is, if you're asking what maybe the next, if I was going to make what I want to happen, the next thing is more of those, like, how do you get more meetups of people trying to figure out meetups of creators? So when Instagram started, it was all about very focused on photography, and we used to do photo meetups. You talk about B&H, I talk about Adorama. They would gather photographers. The way that I met Daniel, who works with me on Casual Mondays, who now I met you, and was through these meetups around. So I think I know that COVID is still fresh, and we're just trying to figure it all out. But I think we need to get back to meetups and sharing knowledge in real life. I think is super important, because I think that is, and I don't think it's about scale. I think there's more of in Hawaii, there's more creators than ever. But let's make sure they're connecting and sharing knowledge and the challenges of doing it from Hawaii, because it's still different. When I go to New York, I get so many meetings in a day. I was just with one of my partners, David, and he's like, dude, how many meetings? I'm like, I'll do like 8 meetings in a day.
Damn. How do you manage then I don't even know if there is a separation, if maybe I'm just making it, but you could call it virtual relationships with your in real life relationships. For us, even, we met virtually, and now we are in real life, right? You're doing it at a way higher pace and scale than I am, right? Yeah. Especially as, let's say, someone running an agency, right? So how do you, and is it even a valid question? Like, how do you balance your your virtual relationships with when you're actually in real life? And especially with now being able to leverage so much virtual relationships in sort of like virtual assistants, and even just collaborations with people from afar. You never have to really meet and have a relationship or foster a relationship in real life to achieve a goal, but you're over here doing both at a very high pace. You're maintaining relationships that are in real life and virtual. How do you handle that?
So I think first and foremost, I think it's about with intention. So I like starting. So like when I start with a client, like maybe, we've met on virtual calls, but I think kicking off in real life is super important. Like you have to kick so I think there's like, it's understanding the touch points when you do have to meet and acknowledging it. And I think like, yes, but even from New York, like Adidas was in Germany. So like, even when I had my agency in New York, dude, I had clients in California, clients in Germany, clients in Portland. So it wasn't like all my clients were like down the block. Yes, I worked with Bloomingdale's for many years, which then was inconvenient. I had to take the 6 train up to like Midtown, which I thought was inconvenient. Now I'm taking 10-hour flights to meet with Noah. But like, so I do think like understanding when to meet, when not to meet is important. And also, I never understood networking because my whole life was networking. But I think the word networking, I don't like the word networking. Can someone remix the word networking? It just sounds so fucking corporate. But the idea of like intentionally like, okay, there's an event at Box Shelly tonight. Like Adobe did an event at Box Shelly. I'm fucking tired. I have kids. The thing starts at like 7. 7 o'clock in Hawaii is like 1 o'clock in the morning in New York. You're like 7 o'clock. I gotta drive to town at 7 o'clock, right? People are like, drive to town, Harry. Listen to you. You're sounding like, no, you got to do it because it's value. Like I'm gonna go. I'm gonna connect. And I met some people and it was awesome. And like you just have to make intentional moments to meet with other people around someone and people that get you. And there is value. Last year I wasn't doing an event in Art Basel in Miami. I took the trip over. I knew a bunch of people and I connected and it was great to like just take a trip to network. I didn't go to South by Southwest this year, but like, last year I went to South by Southwest. I had a project around the same time, so I just stayed a little longer. And I was working on an environmental project at the time, this NFT project where we planted trees. And there was a panel that my team was a part of, so I at least had some excuse to network. But intentionally hitting things and understanding around your interest. If you're interested in fashion, I mean, it's a challenge to say Fashion Week's the place to go, but maybe it is going to a fashion week. If it's Art Basel. But I think just in general, where there's a bunch of creative people meeting, like to me, Fashion Week is just, I know everyone's gonna be in town in September. That's when New York Fashion Week is. And I go, I'll just see a bunch of people from around the world that I haven't seen for a long time. So intentionally going to places where I know a bunch of people would be and keeping those relationships alive and connecting is super important. And then also identifying like, I think just understanding the value of real life and when it's needed, right? Not just saying like, oh my God, I have to be in New York all the time. But I've gone, like I said, I went for 10 days in September. I just went for 10 days last 2 weeks ago and I'm going for another week probably in September. So like I'm going regularly to New York. And that's where one of my clients are there. But then, when I get home, understanding the value of recharging, regrouping, spending time in the water, spending time with my family. And also I like working in my office and just chopping it up and coming with ideas and not city life to me is reacting. And when I'm here, I'm acting. So I can actually so I feel like I'm not, I spent 43 years in New York, so I'm reacting a lot, but like, you're kind of bouncing, bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
But here I can have stuff come from within instead of reacting from what's from outside. So
nice.
I think that balance, look at through that balance is like how much you taking in, how much you're putting out. And when you're putting it out, this is awesome. Like I'm putting it out, but this is awesome. Putting it out and get like bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
So you have to balance like putting on a real person. Because I do believe, I love virtualness. It affords me an amazing life. The power of 2 human beings coming together can destroy the world or fix the world. So if everyone's like, oh my God, it's hopeless. Like what's going on the planet? I believe that like whatever damage has been done or is being done, it's just gonna take like 2 to 3 people getting together to solve it. And it happens pretty quickly. Cause like humans are are super powerful. And I don't know what those people are gonna look like. I don't know what sex they are. I don't know what race they are. Like it's just 2 people, it could be anything. And that's how every great idea started there. And every bad idea started there. So
where do you, I love your energy. You know what I mean? Like I think I've witnessed it through this and devices, but I'm like, yo, there it is. To your point though, like I think nothing is gonna replace this. Having tea with someone, right? Across the table. And for me, my journey here, at least with 100 Bad Videos, is like, I'm gonna do 100. It's a quantitative number that I can hold myself accountable to. And for me, my selfish part of this whole thing is I wanna be a better communicator with people. I wanna have 100 conversations with people that are around me. Again, to the point of build a dream versus chasing. I'm not gonna go chase people. I'm just gonna focus on what my networking. Another word that I wanna have like remixed is authenticity because, you know what I mean? Up to that point, like authenticity, but the irreplaceable nature of this, of face to face sharing this in the breath of life, right? In Hawaii, it's other cultures have a version of that sharing the same air, breathing the same air, sharing the same space. And two questions came up listening to you was one, like a worldly man as yourself, connect, not just you being in places around the world, but being connected to people from around the world and traveling. First question is, what people or culture / country / people do you find like the most interesting? Okay. And then the other one is, it's actually a follow-up to that question. So go ahead. Like,
All right, first and foremost, I'll start with my favorite language not to understand is French.
Not to understand.
Yeah, I don't understand French, but
Okay.
there's a lot of languages I don't like not understanding, but I love not understanding French. French. There is something powerful about being in Paris and just being at a cafe. And I don't usually drink coffee, but I'll probably be drinking a coffee and having some cheese and listening to someone talk French is like, if you haven't done it, try it. I recommend it. I love that Hawaii has a culture. I love the melting pot of New York, that it's this melting pot of multitudes and kind of mixing, and that birthed me. I'm a mix of one side of my family is Irish, one side is Italian, one side of my family was Russian Jew. So I'm a melting pot. So I love that, but I try to explain. People go, oh my God, Hawaii, oh my God, people are like intense there. I'm like, really? Like the nicest people I met, but it's like, you got to play by some rules. There's like cultural rules. It's like, by the way, you know what I mean? Like when you're driving, like let someone go let someone go. To like, what are you talking about? Like you let someone go, you'll be greeted with a hug. You let someone go in New York, you'll be like, the person behind you is honking. Like, why are you slowing them down? So like, there's this like ecosystem of like being rewarded back with more warmth than you give in Hawaii. But if you give self-righteousness and attitude, you will give that much power back. So there's like this, I just think there's like this Hawaiian culture is a multiplier, right? You go and you're like, I'm a worldly guy and I'm going to go on the West Side and be like, I'm a worldly guy. Like I'll feel humbled. If I go humbled, I'll be greeted with warmth. Right. And I think that to me is, New York, it's kind of weird. I think
you could get away with that in New York though.
I don't know. I just think New York, it's their pompousness is sort of celebrated and self-righteousness, and it's just almost the opposite. Like it's not celebrated here. It's like there's a humility in the greatness here, where it's just like that. You know what I mean? Where there, it's like look at my car, look at my watch, look at my thing, look at it's just so like that, like which is like. Like I said, when you chase that and growing up in that and you want that, right? You want to be at that restaurant wearing that thing, and you get there and you're like, it's kind of lonely and empty, where the real power is in the power, the power and strength of humility. I think it's just different, right? Like narcissism and ego-ness is so like, it took a long time for just me to slow down driving. Like I was like, you drive too fast. Like you understand, like you're in Hawaii, slow down. Like
especially on Kamehameha Highway. Don't test people.
But like I said, like people always said, like, how do you deal it? Like in the water too. It's like you don't paddle out and like take the first wave and be like, look at me. Like that's a New York thing. It's like just show that you're the best, right? Like drop who you know, drop what you're about. Like it's like it's a little slower here. It's like wait, like let us ask you who you are. Let us ask you what you're about. Like you're kind of like, and again, obviously not being white. Like you're a visitor. Like acknowledge the humility of like I'm not coming here bringing what I know. Being open to learn and having humility, and then the warmth that is repaid is like tenfold. Where I don't know if the tenfold is there in New York because people are like, what do I get? It's a very what I get.
That's that. See, I've heard someone, local friend who spent a lot of time in these big cities, right? And he said, it's very much when you meet someone, it's almost like this immediate measuring up. What can I get from this person? Nothing. I'm not talking to this person, right? Like this person is no value to me. There's no reward for me to spend any more time with this person or converse with this person, right? Show interest in this person. There's that. So that kind of environment breeds this, like flashing your feathers immediately off the bat kind of attitude. And if you don't, you just won't survive. And he also brings that back to Hawaii and how that's maybe like the not downfall, but one hurdle that people in Hawaii have is they are too humble.
Yeah.
So they won't, even though they have the best, in this case, like feathers to show, they won't. And that could actually be detrimental on that person's journey, even though they want to be recognized for that. You have a beautiful voice.
That's a balance. You know what I mean? That's the authentic. That's the authenticity. But I have a challenge. It's hard because I know it's like, it's like, yes, the internet's like, talk about it.
Yes,
Tell us about
yes.
it. Show us your thing. Like, show it to us all the time. Show us the best. And I'm like, kind of like, yeah, so I guess it's a hard thing for me because like I think yes. So New York, I agree. But the power of New York is there is also an honesty. There's an honesty of New York that I wouldn't compare it to Hawaii, but I'll compare it to some other cultures in Europe, of the honesty of the exchange of like, we're here to get shit done. This is the Olympics of like, if you can even afford to live here, like you have to have something going on.
Right.
And we're just gonna like chop it up and like, let's just get to it, right? That's the 8 meetings in a day. Like there is the power to that. I just think can't be all the time and that balance. But I think, again, from the Hawaii thing, I think like, yes, like, I think understanding humility as a thing of also taking, be able to express what gifts you have and in a way that's yours. And just like everything, cultures have their different ways of doing it. I think, maybe finding that way. I mean, everyone's coming here for some reason.
I think that's why we excel at sports. We have a lot of good athletes from Hawaii.
Oh, amazing.
But okay, this is one contradiction to my earlier point, but like the opportunities, if you're a professional sports player or you're a sports player with talent, skill, potential, you probably leaving Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just kind of one example of that. But when I think sports and games give us that stage to flaunt, flex, show what you got. A perfect example. Perfect football, right? So we have, and singing too.
Yes,
but like
singing, amazing.
when you have that stage and that green light to flex, we will. But in an everyday kind of paddling out, driving, these kind of everyday things, humble. So like to be, I guess, to stick out, to make it as someone in Hawaii, you got to have that switch to turn it on. Even if you're not a performer, you don't sing or you don't play sports, you still have to have that switch to be like, now is the time and the stage to perform, to really just take all the humility, like put that aside and just flex. And so I think having this kind of stuff with social media, it's one way that people are flexing more here. Not just, this isn't a Hawaii specific thing either, but like people who were reserved or didn't have the green light, now you can.
Well, I think two things. I think a point of thought of is one thing. I think sport is the obvious, and again, from football to surfing, right? Where it's like, and people are comfortable with content, right? Like, there's cameras all over the beach now. Like, people understand, like, I can document my sport and I can put it on the internet. I think, to me, would be the creativity, right? Music being one, but the creative arts, like seeing, like you said, like, I can see Casey Neistat become the biggest blogger in the world, and, like, he lived, like, 5 blocks, like I could see that person there. So maybe the question more is is Hawaii seeing their creativity being celebrated, right? And that, to me, I'm not talking about fine art in museums and historical art, tribal art. I'm talking about literally creators, like
people.
They need, you know what I mean? Like understanding that there's a famous Hawaiian creator that's not a famous surfer or a famous football player or amazing singer. Like, but what are the other creative outlets that are being celebrated? Where in New York, you could say graphic designer, you could say like we have so many creative, there's so many successful creative outlets of people that I could see, and also places to celebrate that. So I think maybe again, I come back to like, gathering those people and realizing that like there are amazing creators and who are creating these films here. I mean, there's amazing DPs, directors, like there's films being shot here all the time. There's like amazing films have been shot here. I mean, from TV to film. Like, how do we like recognize those people and bring them together? And like, because I think when you think Hawaii, it's like you don't think networking. Like, how do we do a Hawaii's style of networking?
Next Go Wins is the first one I can think of. And there's many more. And I think the silver lining, if you will, is like Hawaii has, like you mentioned, community. To the point where I think you said it in one of your Casual Mondays, where I might be paraphrasing, but bad relationships create bad projects. Good relationships equal good projects. And at least here, I feel like there's this base of good relationships. There's a base of good people-to-people relationships and communities. So I feel like that's the fertile ground here that we can then go, okay, there's good relationships. Now let's make good products from there. Flex a bit. And now let's go and not just be the good Polynesian player from Kahuku. Don't get me wrong. They're out there. There's a lot of them. We're known for that. But what other avenues like you said, in New York, there might be so many, but like here, like what other avenues and what other people are going to go take these lanes, make these lanes even? That to me is like the future, or not the bright future that I hope to be a part of. And I think this is just me showing how I'm doing it with my limited resources. And you know what I mean? Like this is just me doing kind of me flexing in a way.
Yeah.
And so I hope people look at it like, oh, I can flex too. I want people to flex in a space that's like, it's celebrated and not like, hey, bro, just be. I think for me, I'm half Japanese. I grew up with my Japanese mother, and there's a lot of Asian influence in Hawaii. And as Asians are just more. You don't flex at. That's crazy because Asian Americans do flex. You know what I'm saying? Like here, but motherland Asians.
Yeah.
There's a general consensus of, hey, don't flaunt, be humble, right? Community thinking, not individualistic thinking. And so I think a lot of that is here. A lot of my personal ancestors, or my grandma, her great grandma actually came from Japan, immigrated. So there's some of those kind of artifacts of culture still here today that are strong that would prevent this kind of thing. I'm like, flex. But with every generation, it's changing. I'm at one point, you're at another point. I love talking with someone like with way more like just game experience than I do from different places of the world. And together, collectively, it turns into this kind of narrative of flex when you can, flex when you should, find the right people to flex with. And, it's actually better. And for me, I actually find it's therapeutic too.
Yeah.
I love being able to put an idea out regardless of feedback. Because for me, it feels good. I had to get this idea out, and whether or not one person sees it or like it gets one like or whatever, there's those projects, right?
Yeah.
I don't care, the passion projects or whatever. But then I feel like there's just doing that over and over and over, you're creating a brand. You didn't even know it, but now you've expressed yourself enough that there's a body of work, an algorithm can look at, support you, maybe build a community. Now, if you put intention in there, and you found the right collaborators and relationships to then build you up, sort of chisel it, form it into something. Now you have a business. Now you have an agency. And that's, for real, like the intention, or I think intuition mixed with the courage, the trust to like actually put some action behind the intuition. For me personally, it's like one of these. You mentioned NFTs, like whoop, it's a God candle, now more than ever. And so that's my 2023 in a nutshell. Is a bit of flex, but it's a lot of just meeting people, building these relationships online, in real life, and sort of just demonstrating what I think if more people did, right, it's like there's a horizon. That's the horizon to me. Just more people doing flexing when they can, when they should, with who they should. That's the horizon. But like, what's right? What's right past that? That's I don't know. But I feel like
So I thought of something really interesting. And I think again, flex and also get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We're in such a comfortable place, right? I think it's New York is uncomfortable, right? Literally, like New York is just uncomfortable. You're in a smaller apartment, dude. It's winter now. It gets dark it's dark at 4:30 right now in the afternoon.
Because of the buildings, or just
no? The sun drops earlier. We do daylight savings time. It's just like it's not, like I used to work and get out of work and it was pitch black. I used to not see the sun. So like naturally you're uncomfortable. So to go and be uncomfortable, put yourself out there is like kind of natural. We're in a place where everyone like there is challenges. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we have the most beautiful beaches. We have amazing water. We have amazing weather. Sometimes you're like, man, I don't want to get uncomfortable. But like, even when Casey did that video, just to give context, go look it up. It wasn't the brief. He just went and did what he wanted and brought it back. And like, he took a chance and he got uncomfortable. And you got to find your discomfort, and the faith in what your craft is, and get uncomfortable. Where yes, I'm not saying being an amazing football player is comfortable. The training is intense. There's so much, but like there is a track, right? There's a track laid for those challenges. But that unwalked road, like what you're doing here, is just like take a room in your house and put a bunch of cameras and start talking to people. Like take a chance. Like it doesn't be rewarded in likes or follows, but it has rewarded in like just doing it. And I think that is maybe what is needed more here, is like getting a little uncomfortable. And it's harder to get uncomfortable.
It comes with discovery because you don't
Yes.
know. It's the unknown, and yeah, we're creatures of habit, and we want to be safe. We want that safety net, but we all kind of want to leap, and we celebrate people who leap, but we just
Yes.
never leap. So go ahead, take the leap, figuratively, obviously. You know what I mean? Like,
Take a creative leap.
Yes,
Take the
thank you.
creative leap. Take
Thank
the
you. Thank
leap
you.
into the thing
Yeah.
that you have passion about, and know that, like, I think the thing is, and the secret is know that just because from Hawaii, from Iowa, like, it doesn't matter. I think hopefully the internet is teaching you that if you make the best fucking pie in the world, like, put it on the internet, like, you don't have to be from New York. And like the greatest business in New York most of them start in New York. And like a lot of them are businesses started in smaller towns or random places. So find your craft, have the faith and trust to go through with it. Don't do it alone. That's my always thing. It doesn't mean like don't do it alone. And this was awesome.
Thank you. Let the people know where they can find you.
Okay, just at Harry B on Instagram, HARY B as in boy, and then Casual Mondays TV on YouTube is where I post, and and then my agency is called Bright Colors. Obviously, I wear a lot of bright color, so it's brightcolors.studio is my agency, and I have a new project coming out really soon. I'm going to be sharing. I've been building an app, an AI powered app. So yeah, I've been busy in my
Ooh, we didn't even jump into AI, but we'll save that for another
yes,
time.
awesome. Dude.
Thank you so much, Harry B in the house. Thank you.